what we really wanted to do this year with the history is honestly take a look at this front part of the church and just share the history of how it all came into being for us to be sitting here today. Now, originally in this church, up here in the front and going right back to the wall, were all side pews going this way. And there was a piano over there in the corner, okay? But then, in June of 1901, the Reverend W.P. Chase, and it's very interesting how under certain leadership, things really got done. That, under the leadership of the Reverend W.P. Chase, he would assume the pastorate here in 1901. He would be here for 4 years. And it was during his time here that the very first organ would be installed. And it was a new pipe organ. It was installed in 1902, but I believe the actual playing of it began in 1903. And the cost was $1,300. Isn't that interesting? An addition was built on the rear end of the church, the kitchen being underneath that addition. And that all came together for the price of $467. Just imagine if we tried to put on an addition today, what it would cost us. Well, this front platform was then enlarged, and it became called the choir platform. And the baptistry was over here. Now that baptistry, we have no pictures of it. We don't know the exact year that it went in, but it seems to have served the church after the baptisms in the river. We would see the progression from literal immersion baptisms in the river, then a baptistry right up here. It would have been under where the piano is. And then actually, the organ and the baptistry came within the same time, all within that 4 years under that pastor. Now, in August of 1924, we're going to shoot ahead here, the Reverend Ray Seeley comes to Grace Church. And although we don't have the exact dates in our history, we know that it was during his pastorate that we had a few more advancements made here at Grace. First of all, one of the advancements was a gift. It was actually made possible by the Philathia classes, which was the name given to the Women's Fellowship of the time and to a young women's group of the time. And I looked up that word, Philathia. That word in Greek means lover of truth. Isn't that interesting? But during that time, a new electric motor was installed to power that old pipe organ which you see on your program. And it was gifted by the senior Philathia class. And then at Easter time, in 1928, the junior Philathia class gifted the congregation, surprising them, with the beautiful white marble, is that over there, Pastor? The white marble baptismal font that is still in the front of our sanctuary. And it's very, very heavy, it's tough to move. And it's because it is marble. So now we see that we've gone from the river, out of the immersions in the baptistry, and now we have a font, a baptismal font. Now that was dedicated to the church on an Easter Sunday, and that very day, 5 people were baptized through sprinkling. Now listen to the names because you're going to recognize some of them. Robin Leavenworth, Alan Weaver, right? Whose granddaughter or grandniece works at Stewart's. James Lampman, probably some of you remember James Lampman, Sandra Bowers, and Cheryl Chrisman, Jimmy and Lucille's younger daughter, Cheryl. Now, in 1944, we're going to jump into the 40s, the Reverend Roland Updike preached. He became the new minister at Grace Church, and he would be our minister here until 1949, and it was during his pastorate. We don't know the exact year, but during his pastorate, the baptismal, you know what I'm trying to say here, the tank would last be used, okay? And so he was actually the last minister to baptize anyone within the sanctuary by immersion. And then shortly after that, it went, but there is no year, and there's really no, I've not been able to find anything about why that decision was made or how it was made. But then we go back to the pipe organ. That first pipe organ would have been serving Grace Church until the year 1973. That was a long time. And at that time, in 73, work would begin under the direction of the famed organ builder, Robert Rowland. Now, I could give you a whole sermon on just Robert Rowland. His intrigue with organs actually started over at the Methodist Church when he was just a boy. And he would go in the back there and he'd look at the fans and the billows and all that stuff. And he was intrigued with it. And that intrigue stayed with him, and he got into the building of organs. And when he came here, he was actually called. And I call it called because it was his ministry. You can just tell by reading about him that it was what he did for the Lord. And so he thought he was retired. Sound familiar? He was 75 years old when he was called here to build this pipe organ, this one that we have now. And when he came, the headlines in the newspapers, we've even got the old newspapers, the Evening Times, which no longer exists. And it said, "Will this be the last pipe organ for this man?" And I believe it was. I believe our organ, I don't know, Beth, if you know, and I didn't get a chance to ask you, but I believe this was his last organ that he would build.
I know he built one in the Methodist Church.
I think that was before us, though.
It's very, our organ is just top of the line, primo.
Yes, it is.
And when I played one in the Methodist Church, I can see that there's a huge difference.
Yes.
This organ is
Supreme.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Now, an organ committee was set up at the time. Jimmy and Lucille Chrisman were the head of it. Frank and Mildred Christians were the treasurers, and Teresa Elms was the secretary. And they began to raise money to cover all the costs of building the organ. They raised $13,000. Back in the 70s, that was a lot of money. And so they, when the organ was completed, they were able to pay off every bill. And they were free and clear with a brand new, beautiful organ built by Robert Rowland. Now, it was time to dedicate the organ. So I'll bet Shirley was here for that. Who was here for the organ dedication? I'll bet you were, Beth. It was May 5th, 1974. I'll bet you were here. And what would happen is the organ would be dedicated in the morning at the 11 a.m. service. And then in the afternoon, the organ builder's daughter, her name was Roberta Roland Ray Bold, who is still alive and giving concerts. Daughter of the organ builder would give the first concert, and it was unbelievable. This woman had started piano lessons at the age of 4, and it was a gift, another gift from God. By the time she was 10 years old, she was playing the organ, and playing the organ so well, she did a concert at the age of 10 at the Reformed Church, and a concert for adults. She was like a child prodigy, really. And there's so much information on her too. I didn't want to take too much time on that, but what a talented and just really dedicated her ministry also to the Lord. That the day of that afternoon dedication concert, there were at least 250 people in this church. They had to put chairs down in the front. They put chairs up in both choir lofts. Everything was full. Chairs in the back. And they said, there was an article in the newspaper, Evening Times, and they said that latecomers were on the stairs and spilling out onto the street just to hear that beautiful new organ and that concert given by the organ builder's daughter. So, there is a lot of information for those of you that might be really into organ building. There is a lot of information on exactly what is in there and how many pipes and, I'm not going to go through all that, but it tells you the pipes, the stops. But what I loved was most of the pipes were refurbished and revoiced. Isn't that a great word? From the original pipe organ. So, they're not brand new, but they were refurbished and revoiced. And, of course, some new had to be added. And then the other thing, and this is all I'll say, but I just find it fascinating, the center projection. There are 152 pipes just in that, and it's called, listen to this, the Great Principal Chorus. So that's where the thrust of the sound comes. And there's a reason for everything. The grilling, everything lends to the beautiful sound. So, you know what? I just think we're so blessed to have such a beautiful instrument. And now, as far as the baptisms, we're going to Christian Lake. So, we're taken care of here by the hand of the Lord, and let's praise His holy name for it.